We're speaking to Dr. JohnBen Loy this morning. He is a licensed marriage and family therapist from Rekindle Therapy. And we're talking about companion and the importance of companionship, especially later in life. Good morning, Dr. JohnBen.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, can you please explain to us what is companionship?
Well, generally speaking, companionship is about having somebody to be with, somebody to hang out with, somebody to talk to. Living alone can sometimes be lonely, isolating, and even depressing for some people. So, having companionship that is healthy social interaction with another human person can be very important for our health and well being.
So it doesn't need to be just a romantic relationship.
Absolutely not. Yeah,
Okay.
romantic relationships are a kind of companionship.
Okay. But why is social interaction so fundamental to our overall health and well being?
Well, generally speaking, we are social creatures. So we thrive and we grow and we learn, etc., by interacting with others of our own kind. Similar to mammals, we all need social interactions in order to thrive. And interestingly, there was a very long study that was done over 75 years. It's called the Harvard Study of Adult Development. And it showed that um, for longevity and happiness, the most important factor is actually social connection, not money, not fame, but having meaningful, healthy social connections actually help people to be happier and live longer.
Oh, wow. So it can help us live longer as well.
Yes, definitely.
But when you say like social interaction and then two people living together, at some point, discussions can lead to arguments and everything, and each challenging each other. Is that also healthy?
No, in fact, an important lesson from that same study is that conflictual relationships is not good. So, so managing our companionship or our social interactions is important. You know, we want to have healthy social interactions.
Okay. Now, why is companionship more important for the elderly then?
Um, Actually, I'm not sure that it's more important for the elderly. I think what ends up happening is for the elderly, social connections diminish. Uh, by reason of loss, death of friends, and then you're aging, so you're not really doing as much as you used to when you were younger. Um, I would say social interactions are just as important for the elderly as for everybody else,
Hmm.
but then they have to pay more attention to cultivating that. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Now, there are various circumstances that lead to individuals looking for companionship. Um, like, for example, a death of a spouse or divorce, incarceration, even institutionalization. Like, are there any circumstances that we as human beings will not seek out companionship?
Yeah. Um, well, in this case, companionship generally as social interactions, even if you go to prison, there is social connections there, right,
Yeah.
of a different kind. I would say there's very little reason why people will not have companionship. Some people are introverts and they might prefer to have less social interaction, but their lesser social interactions are often more meaningful, deeper conversations, for example. Um, in the terms of companionship as an intimate life partner, let's say. So for those situations, I have seen many times people post intimate relationship, whether it be death or divorce, etc. Do choose not to have another intimate life partner. And many times in these cases, such people have active and meaningful companionship with their friends, with family members, with work colleagues, or in other ways that fulfill them. And having another intimate relationship may actually prove to be more stressful and draining than they want it to be. And
Mm.
so they use other kinds of companionship to make up for that the individual one-on-one romantic connection.
But it's being alone for the rest of your life. Let's say you're in your 60s and then
Mm.
something happens to your partner and then you're living alone and you don't have any other partners. Um, to your mental state, is there any, or even to your physical state, is there any dangers to it? Can it be detrimental to you?
Um, I don't think that not having a romantic life partner is harmful necessarily to your mental well-being, but definitely not having meaningful, healthy social interactions and connections. That's what's going to be harmful for you. So you could be 60, you could have been a someone who's lost a husband or a wife for 10 years, but you weekly have your karaoke friends, or you do your gardening with a few friends, you do your exercises, you'll have your children visit, etc. And you have a meaningful, maybe something that you're doing voluntarily, for example, you can live a very healthy, vibrant life. So you don't necessarily need to have one single companion.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, because a lot of people, a lot of times, especially when there's a death of a spouse, they sort of cannot get over the grief sometimes, right? And
Hmm.
they cannot like love again after being married to someone for so long.
Yeah, so even love, right? You don't just love one person, right? Is it really true that you can't love again, or is it more like you really miss that intimate connection with that one person? So going through the grief may also mean, um, you know, blessing that close, intimate person that you're so attached to, blessing that to the next life, right?
Mm.
And learning to cultivate the little loves that will fill you up. We don't all have to have big meals every day. Little bits sustain us.
Okay. But for someone who is looking for this romantic, intimate companion, right, for later in life, how
Yeah.
important is family support and acceptance?
Yeah, I think that really depends also on uh, how close the family is to the person. If they are uh, the person is very close to the family, then family support becomes very important. But if the person is, for the most part, let's say the children are grown up and they don't mind whatever dad chooses to do, then it's not very much of an issue.
Mm.
So, but generally speaking, close relationships, being supportive is important.
If the family's not supportive, then
Mhm.
should the individual still continue to look for a life partner later in
Uh,
life?
yeah. So I think that depends on a case to case basis, right? It depends on what the family means to the person. Um, I think that my question for the individual who's asking, should I look for intimate love, right? If my children are not happy about it, is to ask themselves and ask the children the question, well, what are you concerned about me looking for a new partner?
Mm.
Is it that the time spent? Is it my finances? Are you worried the new partner is going to use me? Is it, are you concerned about the age difference, that my new partner might be the same age as you, my daughter, something like that. So as much as possible, I encourage families to be able to talk about that more openly, and sort of unpack some of these uncomfortable, awkward thoughts.
But in an Asian setting,
Hmm.
systemically, everyone generally goes, "Yeah, look at her, so old already, still want to look for a boyfriend." Ah." That's they always tend to people tend to say that.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
how do you get over that?
I'm not quite sure what circles will say that. Maybe I can't
The auntie
imagine.
circles.
Oh, the auntie circles will say it. Maybe they're
Ah.
jealous. Maybe they're jealous their friend just got a new partner and they're alone. I don't know. Uh, but yeah, I think if you're going to have people who are going to ear you, then is that a really healthy friendship?
Hmm.
Right? They're not really concerned about what's important for you, what's meaningful, what's healthy for you. Yeah, so I would question whether that's a really good relationship to hang on to.
Okay. Now, looking at the case of Natalie, whom we spoke to on Monday, her husband has now been institutionalized. He's in a home because he's not in a good mental state.
Yeah.
And she is looking for companion, not actively. But how does she find someone, knowing that her husband is still alive, like, and the guilt that she will go through if she does find someone that she, like?
Now, if I'm not mistaken, that relationship is it still, can I say, active?
No, she says that
Yeah,
he's no longer the man that she married. He is no
right.
longer there. Yeah.
Even before the institutionalization, the relationship was had already deteriorated. Isn't that right?
In a
Yeah.
In a
way,
way, yeah,
yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. So that's important. I think we know for I have seen quite a few couples in which they come in and they are still functioning as a intact family. I'm not even sure if I would call them a couple. They sleep in different rooms. They only talk about the kids, and then once the kids are old enough, to go off, it's an empty nest, and then the two of them hardly even talk to each other. So in such situations where the relationship has died 10, maybe even 20 years ago, but the marriage is intact, I think people need to ask themselves, um, is this relationship actually alive, even though the marriage certificate has never been, ended? So for Natalie, for example, she needs to ask whether this really is this decision to look for another companion, an intimate partner, is really connected to her husband being institutionalized or not.
Mm,
Maybe she just never even thought about it before he became institutionalized. But there are lots of people uh, outside who are in this situation, unfortunately, because their marriages have really dwindled, and they're just not doing anything about it. Yeah.
okay. But what do you do though when your marriage is dwindled? Like, is it divorce straight away, or are there ways that you can work on the marriage to keep it
Well,
alive, especially in the later stages of life? Like I've
yeah,
heard of stories of older couples who sleep in separate bedrooms, or even if they're
that's
in the
right.
same room, they're sleeping on separate beds, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So my eldest couple that I've ever worked with were in their 70s. So wonderful. I have really fond memories working with them. It was such a different experience. Um, you're talking to a marriage and family therapist, so there's always help. A good qualified, not just any therapist. Some therapists are not trained to do a couple of family work. So a well-trained one will be able to help you to unpack what has happened. The hurts and injuries, what we call attachment injuries, right? That close love injuries, might have just been left alone because the couple were not able to really negotiate or talk through or heal through those wounds. And then they sort of just split apart and have a new normal of two separate lives. Those things, if it's not too late, can be helped. Sometimes I do tell couples, I will keep, I am like that paramedic to your relationship. I will keep pumping and trying to save your life to get a breath out of you exactly, you know, uh, until you tell me, hey doc, sorry, it's over.
Mm,
I know it now. I said, okay, you've tried your best and you know it now. So my question is, how do you want me to help you to move on well apart,
yeah.
right? To have a constructive uh, parting, basically. And I do that work too,
Hmm.
because life is still meaningful, after the ending of a marriage.
Okay. As a marriage therapist, what would be the best outcome for you when you counsel a, a couple?
The best outcome is when both members say, so it feels like we did our best and we came to a place whereby we can say that I wish you well, whether I wish you well because I love you so much more than I ever did, or I wish you well because I can just think well of you.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's really about how they see it.
So it's not a matter of like keeping them together and divorce is the last option, that kind of thing.
There is an element. I came into this work to help relationships improve. So I would say 100%. I try to help relationships mend and heal and to restore the love. 100%.
Mm.
But at the same time, I always tell my clients, you have to let me know. You have to let me know, that it's not working. Then my job then is to help you to be able to, find 100% health separately. You know what I'm saying? I'm
Yeah.
like that surgeon that will keep operating to keep you alive. Yeah, until your vital sign says I'm flatlined. There's no more pulse.
Mm.
Generally, though, do couples who, and I'm not saying that the older you have to be older couples, right? But let's say that they're really good friends, they're still together, but they come to see you and then they say, we just want to revive that spark.
Mm.
They miss having that romantic feeling in each other. Does that ever, is it quite common in your line of work where couples come to you to
Is
see?
what we hope for.
Right.
Yeah. But unfortunately, not as common. It's kind of like, who goes for cancer screening when they're healthy?
Right.
We just don't. We're not
Yeah.
preventive in terms of how we approach mental health and relationship health. So yeah, so a word out there to all the listeners, do your preventive health checkup. Go get your marriages revitalized with a marriage therapist. It might just take 2 sessions, but it's worth your investment.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's very easy to
Okay.
get a health checkup and to revitalize a relationship that has no inherent problem.
Yeah.
It's just dull. It just needs dusting.
Yeah. But you know what I mean, right?
I like how
That's
Dr. John Ben says it just needs a little bit of dusting
yeah.
for the
That's
sparks to
right.
come back out, right?
That's right. That's right.
Because it's like,
Exactly.
I really like this guy. He's my husband. We spend all the time together, but I really used to be really into him. Now it's like, meh. You know what I mean? It's always that meh moment.
Yeah. You can revitalize it.
Okay. So counseling is not only necessary in the cases where people have trouble in their relationship, but also if you need some revitalization in the relationship.
Spark.
Okay. Now, doctor, what's your advice then when it comes to companionship for someone in the case similar to Natalie, let's say, she feels the guilt of moving forward because, well, her husband is still alive. But I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes people feel the guilt as well after a divorce or after a death of a spouse because they cannot move forward. They feel like I still am betraying my ex-spouse or my late spouse because I'm moving forward.
Yeah. Very rarely do I see guilt when it's a divorce, because the ending is so intentional
Mm.
that people can move on to a new companion, intimate companion. I just want to separate the two because
Yeah.
there are many kinds of companionship. But in the case whereby if you have, say, a spouse who is institutionalized mentally, dementia, let's say you've been caring for a partner for 5 years,
Or
and
even like incarcerated, like life in
yeah,
prison. What do you
and
do?
yeah, that's a tougher one, and I think that this is where actually, getting some professional help is useful, because it's not a one size fits all kind of advice that I can give. So it really depends on your history. It depends on where your guilt complex comes from, because sometimes people are guilty because it's from childhood. They have been socialized to take care of another person, and they haven't really taken care of themselves until they're now 55. They realize, hey, hang on a second, I'm important too. But in the meantime, their spouse is incarcerated and they want to move on because they've grown, right? So a professional will be able to journey with you as a professional companion, if you will. Not that kind, but a professional mental health companion to journey with you through your decision process. Some people will, end a marriage when they have a spouse incarcerated or even in a mentally can't be helped kind of situation. Yeah, it's not easy.
Mm.
Mhm.
All right. How about the older folks with spouse who have passed on? Should they still be looking for an intimate relationship, even in their 60s or their 70s?
Yeah. Um, Short answer, why not? Right? Why not? But then the truth is, it's much harder uh, to look for a companion, single intimate companion in your later life. But guess what? We have the internet. And actually, there's a lot of sort of internet sites like eHarmony, for instance, actually caters to people who are older. And you'll be surprised. People do want companionship with others of their own age.
Mm.
But because of our social settings, it's hard to find like-minded people. So with the internet, you can actually put in the keywords. You can talk about your grandchildren, in your dating profile. Put out more information there, and then somebody will say, "Oh wow, this." Yeah, I'm not a I may be 65, but I'm not looking for a 30-year-old. I'm looking for someone who is in her 50s and 60s that, can talk with me. We can play cards, we can garden. And oh, look, here's a lady. She's educated. She's had a life. She's had a job. She's retired and she's okay looking. Why not, go out for a coffee and meet and have a chat? Worst comes to worst, you can have a friendship.
Mm.
And that's not too bad.
So it's like Tinder for seniors.
Yeah, it doesn't work out so well in Tinder. So definitely look for the apps that's going to be more appropriate for you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. John Ben Loy, for those great advices. And yeah, looking forward to chatting with you again soon next time.
Sure.
Yeah.